Hello everybody, once again I am Lehman Crafton Jr. aka Zorval Chan Less Than Guru. We have Mars the video cat here, which he's blending in with my white shirt today. Um, Today is going to be a more serious topic, one that I never planned on needing really, but the way circumstances are, I feel that putting this video out is probably better than trying to go online and add comments to millions of different things. So when you have a platform like this, even if I do not have a ton of subscribers, but I do appreciate all 56 of you, I'm very happy to see it going up instead of going down. But today is a more serious topic. And also, I will probably, if you've watched this, you probably saw it, putting a trigger warning on this video for the conflict, the war that is happening in Ukraine right now. So normally in a tabletop role playing, you wouldn't necessarily need to bring this type of subject out, but Torg and Torg Eternity, a game that if you are a subscriber might be a reason that you came here, either that or Palladium, but Torg is a game that I am heavily invested in. It is a game that I have loved for 30 years. It is 32 years, I guess now, 1990. A game that currently, in its current phase of Torg Eternity, that I am a freelance author for. And so it has meant a lot to me. And with Torg, it takes place on Core Earth, a Earth that is very similar, if not the same, as our own Earth. And my recent, and when I say recent, I mean within the last 15 years, up to the present, I guess, real life experiences has dealt a lot with having friends and visiting Ukraine and Russia. So this whole situation is, I don't want to say it's like, oh, it's hitting me so hard, because it is affecting friends of mine, their very lives. It is affecting me because they are my friends. So while it's not in a absolute direct way affecting me and my livelihood, it is affecting my mental state of mind, because I have been to Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. I spent about a month and a half there, living in an apartment that I rented, and just I decided when I was about 33, 34, something like that, to live in a different country and see if I could survive. Just one of those spur of the moment things. I probably have talked about this on the channel before in my background when I was talking about Torg and how I got associated with writing for Torg Eternity. But basically because of that experience, I began to learn Russian. And you might think, well, Ukrainians speak Ukrainian, why didn't you learn Ukrainian? And very simple, I started to, and then the people who were living in Kyiv that became my friends, they were like, we speak Ukrainian, but our native tongue is Russian. There are lots of Russian speakers in Ukraine, and that's why I switched to speaking Russia. Then time passed, and I ended up married to a Russian, and even though that didn't last, it was 9 years, and it was more personal things, not because she was Russian, but other aspects that caused us to divorce. But I still have friends in Russia that I speak with daily, and this whole thing is affecting them as well. And why am I bringing this up on a role-playing channel, which is if you're playing Torg and you are doing anything related to Tharkold, it could really mess with some of your players who might have ties to either Russia and or Ukraine. And just as any other things that you might want to tread lightly on that might affect other players in your games, I highly recommend you to not dismiss things such as this. Don't dismiss anything. Some people have different tolerances for things. Certain people might react to it something one way, and others react to it a different way. If you've watched any of my background videos, you know that I work in a crime lab. I see the horrors that people do to each other on a daily basis. I have dealt with dead bodies, identifying them, getting hands in, just hands and fingers in, to identify a deceased person. And it takes its toll. Yet all of that experience of the horrors of what I see really does pale in the effect of an actual full-scale invasion war situation. People I work with, I did not participate in it because I wasn't in the crime lab at the time, but people there have had to deal with natural disasters like we had in Missouri, in Joplin, there was a huge tornado that went through. Just a couple of years ago, there was a tornado here in Jefferson City that went through, and people's lives can be disrupted, and something that you might not be used to or accustomed to and don't see a big deal, don't think that it's a big deal, it could be a big deal for somebody out there. And that's why, even if you don't have a specific session 0, talk about the game beforehand, and maybe even during the game. Maybe something like this happens, this horrible situation happens, and you need to divert how your game is running because of what is happening now. And always make the game your own. And you remember the first key I have is know your players. That's the most important. There's 3: know your players, know your setting or your system, and know the purpose, the setting. Very first is know your players. Keep your players in a safe mental state. Make sure that any new thing that comes up that might touch upon them, something that normally might not mean very much in your game, all of a sudden it takes a deeper significance in it. I'm going to look over here at my second screen because I do wish to read from the Torg Session 0 document about Tharkold. And this is a section that I personally wrote. I wrote it 2 years ago, and some of this is very eerie and scary and heartbreaking in some ways to me, because at that point in time I was looking at things historically and modern history that I was knew about when I was writing about Tharkold, trying to keep it somewhat authentic, and reasons that I gave within Torg are reasons that are being used as, and when I say reasons, I don't mean good reasons, I mean propaganda reasons and false justifications, things like that. But these things that I used as that propaganda, as those false justifications, are what are being used to justify this horrible war in Ukraine. And even though I know I directly have no influence over the Kremlin or the Russian government, it still is like it's messing with my mind to know that these things that I wrote down are this, like, I had the forethought. And I'm not saying that I'm like Nostradamus predicting anything, but it's a anybody who understood the history and the current situation, both the 100 years ago history and further back to the present, could see these things. It's not just me saying it, but I'm one that wrote it down for a fictional game setting on a real Earth, or a core Earth, a fake fictionalized Earth, but an Earth nonetheless. And this is stuff happening. 2 years ago, Ulysses Spiel delayed Pan Pacifica and flipped that order with Oroch, specifically, and Tharkold, specifically because of the pandemic. Because in Torg, there was a pandemic in Asia, and Tharkold is already out. We can't change what we've already written in Tharkold. And I hope nothing else of the terrible fictional wars, or I guess for fun, in Torg end up coming true. I mean, two things have already kind of predicted correctly is freaking crazy in my mind. But I want to read this small section and then give a couple more thoughts on the situation. And so basically in Tharkol is they have a higher social axiom, which is normally for the betterment of society, but Tharkol is a dark Mad Max, Terminator, Hellraiser mix. And the high social is something that I took to be as propaganda. And they have a higher tech, they have some magic, and really high psionics as well. So, dealing with politics, the way I was thinking was with these things, an invasion of Russia under Tharkold influence, they would have the propaganda to be able to change people's minds, and the tech to invade. I didn't come up with the thought of invasion, but I did come up with a lot of the reasons that would be used by, in this, the fictionalized President Volkov, and why he would invade and what he would say about it. But I was using real world knowledge. So politics, there's a section here of politics, because in our session 0, we want to make sure that all players are comfortable at the table and can have fun and enjoy, and don't get upset in any way at the table. That's a bad thing if you have somebody who's dealing with real issues and trying to get away from it, or just not wanting to deal with it in a game, and it's coming up in a game. And one of the things that I knew even 2 years ago when this was written, that it could have an effect. So there's a section in Tharkold called Politics, and it says, while there's an old saying to not discuss politics, Tharkold has a distinct premise in Torg Eternity that core Earth Russia willingly allied with demon invaders. Now that's completely fictional. Russia is not allied with demon invaders, but here's where the but is. Then it invaded areas of Eastern Europe that historically have been under Soviet rule. If you have players that come from those areas, they may not want to delve into the theme because it comes close to what happened, and remember, this is 2 years ago, and is happening currently in the real world. I talk about that. I have friends who went through the Orange Revolution, the Maidan Revolution in Kyiv, and that this topic is heavily on their minds. Now it is forced upon their minds because of they're getting bombed right now. And that don't necessarily choose historical accuracy over the well-being of you and or your players. And don't be afraid to change locations, change anything that you need to do to make it more comfortable for your game. Now, there's a whole deep dive. I have a video, which is Torg Tuesdays 12 Blood on the Blasted Lands Deep Dive, a book that I was a co-author for here that I've talked about a lot, and I like. And up until a week ago, I was extremely proud of it. And while I still think it is a good story, it's not a good story for everybody. I have Kyiv in here. I have an occupied Kyiv, Russians occupying Kyiv. That might not be something that you wish to have in your game. Change it. You have my permission. You don't have to be official. Make the game your own. Take your players and their feelings under account. It was a fictionalized thoughts I had using real world knowledge that by some horrible coincidence has become close to what is happening now. And it's just really mentally messing with me. To the point where I'm making this video and posting it on a gaming, tabletop role-playing advice. Sorry about that. My keyboard got hit. But basically, I don't necessarily want to do real-world stuff on a gaming advice channel and tutorial channel and things like that. But I felt that this is needed. Because of who I am and the projects that I have officially worked with recently and what is happening now. So I will start rambling if I continue. So just please keep your players and your own mental health in the forefront of your mind. If this is something that is going to affect yourself or your players, change it or don't do it. There's nothing that says you have to play a game that I wrote. If you want to play it, fine. I'm not saying don't play it. I'm not saying boycott it. I'm saying take your group into account when you do it. And also, as a last real world thing, the Russian people are not the Russian government. I am seeing stories about people threatening Russians. I'm seeing them about calling up Russian restaurants and Russian places of culture, threatening to bomb them, kill them, etc. That is never acceptable whatsoever. It was not acceptable when people were harassing and doing the same stuff against people from Asia because of the pandemic. It's not something that people should be doing against Russians for what the Russian government is doing. The people are not their government. Think about it this way, whichever side of the political spectrum you are, either now or a couple of years ago, you were against whatever president. And if you would be yelled at by somebody for being an American and look at all this evil stuff you're doing and this isn't the president I voted for, how wrong that is. Same thing applies to other countries. Just because somebody is Russian does not mean that they are evil and that they are invaders and stuff. They are having their lives impacted as well. Yes, they're not being bombed by physical bombs, but economic sanctions are wiping out jobs, wiping out savings, and to the normal average everyday citizen, you're seeing on the news about all the Russian oligarchs that are being sanctioned and having yachts and stuff taken from them. The normal person on the street now is having trouble getting money from their bank accounts. They did not want this war. They did not even expect this war. They didn't know anything like this was going on. Propaganda is being given to them. They're cut off from many outside media sources. A ton of my ways that I communicate with my friends are being taken away. So you can hopefully see that this is affecting me. I have friends in and from Ukraine. I have friends in and from Russia, even my ex-wife. Even though we've had differences, we've divorced. I don't, she's not a bad person. She should not be. She's living in America. She came here. Um, she did everything correctly, went through the visa, got her green card, permanent green card, took her citizen test, got citizenship, and even before all of this crap happened, was you could see discrimination when there would be a job help wanted sign, and I would go in and I would say, hey, I saw the help wanted sign, um, and I would be told, oh, that person, talk to them, they're the ones who get it. And then I would have my wife come in and she would go there, and they would act like they had no idea what, no, I'm not the person who does this. The person right before them said it, things like that. And since it was at a different time, like I wasn't trying to do a sting or setup. I just was trying to find a job, and my wife wasn't with me. And she had talked about that place, and I went in to ask who it was. And then when it came back and, told her, and she went, all of a sudden they don't have a job. Things like that were happening 5, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, whenever. They don't need to happen. She went through all the processes to become an American citizen correctly. It wasn't oh, I'm going to marry you to get a green card. She spent longer than what was needed to get her green card to make sure that this was the decision she wanted. And now, with airspace cut off, her family is back there. She can't go to it. This is affecting real people's lives. Don't think that all Russians are part of the Russian government. It wasn't good back in the Cold War, which I grew up in, about the terror of Russians. And even back then, I couldn't understand how all Russians could be evil. It's the same thing in World War II. All Germans or Japanese were evil. And my grandfather is an American from Germany, or of German descent. My great grandmother, full-blooded German, lived most of her life in the United States. Just things like that. Don't let the hype and the antagonistic aspects of just seeing Russia attacks Ukraine and think all Russians are attacking all Ukrainians. Support Ukraine. They have every right to be their own individual country. They have fought multiple wars to be free, to be independent, and now they're getting held back. Just don't confuse the government with the people. There are lots of Russia, biggest country in space area, land area, has less population than the United States, but still the vast majority just want to live their lives just like you and I want to live our lives. They don't want to be part of this. They think that it's a horrible thing, yet they're in a country that does not allow freedom of speech. They are getting arrested. They are getting beaten. They just passed a law that if they say anything bad, they say false things about the war, which is if they don't toe the government's line, they can get up to 15 years in jail. Law just passed because of this. The same thing is now when you have one side wanting to make laws that, oh, if there's this type of protest, throw them in jail, and then 2 months later they're protesting for something else, but that's fine. It's not freedom of speech. They don't have it. It's even worse over there. So I've been ranting and for a long time. Please just be nice to people. Understand that people are not the governments, and in your game, anything that could trigger a player, keep your player's mental health and your own mental health. That should be the highest priority of any game. It should be over any type of realism or anything that other people think would be fun. Just that is the big thing. Know your players and make sure that everybody is comfortable in the game. So once again, I am Leland Crafton Jr., aka Zoral Chan Less Than Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.